Welcome to the first module of my Content Creator Masterclass. I am so excited you are here and I hope you are too. So this first module is all about mastering your mindset. This is by far the most important part about creating financial freedom as a content creator. How can you achieve something if you keep making up excuses as to why you can't do it? I don't have enough followers. I'm not good at photography. I don't always have the time to go out and take photos. But if you reverse your thought process and instead say, okay, I might not know everything yet, but I am willing to do the work to make this happen, then it is going to be so much easier for you to achieve the success that you want. Financial freedom depends on casting aside a scarcity mindset and embracing an abundant one. So, in a scarcity mindset, typically people think that time is limited, money is limited, you make fear-based decisions, and you worry about the future. And you are consciously or unconsciously concerned about what might go wrong. But when you're focusing your energy and thinking about what might go wrong, then you are going to see more of that. Instead, focus on having an abundant mindset. So, an abundant mindset means that there's plenty of wealth and happiness for everyone. You're optimistic about the future, and you make big picture decisions based on the long term instead of the short term. So, there are 7 key concepts of abundance. The first one is thinking big versus thinking small. So, when we talk about thinking big versus thinking small, we typically look at the bigger picture in the long term versus thinking about how it feels right now, how scary it is, how people will judge you, or anything like that. You're thinking about the long term. So, one example of this is when I first wanted to start doing content creation and turning this into a career, one thing that stopped me was being afraid that people were going to judge me, that I was a wannabe, that I was using all these hashtags that people like made fun of, and that was something that really held me back in the beginning. And I was also afraid that people would see me as a failure. They would see me trying for who knows how long, but you know, I was afraid of being seen as a failure, that they would just see me trying and they would judge me based on that. Whereas if I was looking at the big picture, which I was eventually able to do, we all have to start somewhere. And no matter where you're at in life, you have to start at the beginning. No matter what you want to do, all the biggest professionals out there, they all started. Sorry, my air turned on. But they all started somewhere. So look at the long term. If this is something that you want to do, who cares what you feel like right now? Who cares how scary it is? Who cares that people might judge you? If this is something you want to do, you have to go for it. You have to put in the work. And if you do, you will be amazed at the results that you can achieve. The next concept is plenty versus lack. So if you believe there is plenty of everything for everyone and you know you deserve it, and there's not a lack, if you're focused on, oh, there's never enough money, then there isn't going to be enough money. That's what's in your mind. And how can you achieve something that if you don't even believe it? So focus on the plenty. Focus on the fact that there is enough resources out there for everyone, and you deserve it just as much as anyone else. There is a reason you're being called to do this, to do anything that if it's art, if it's content creation, there's a reason that you're being called to do this. So, I really believe that we're here, part of our purpose here on earth is to just enjoy our lives and be happy, live a life that makes us happy, like for a lot of us, that's helping people and inspiring people. And that's what content creation allows us to do. We're helping businesses, whether they're big or small, bring traffic in. We're helping inspire people to get out and travel, to get outdoors. That's something that I'm super passionate about because it's helped me in so many ways. And the fact that I'm able to do this every single day is so fulfilling. So there's a reason you're being called to do this. There is plenty of resources and opportunity out there for everyone. And like I said before, you deserve it just as much as anyone else. And as soon as you begin to realize that, achieving your dreams is going to be so much easier. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is happiness versus resentment. So, this is being genuinely happy for others' success. Other people are not our competition. You are your own competition. Your negative mindset or your limiting beliefs are your competition. So, being happy versus resentful towards others who are succeeding will help you so much because you can look at that instead of comparing it and feeling down on yourself and getting in a negative state. You can look at that to be inspired and even reach out to them and say, hey, how did you do this? Like, I would love to learn, and be happy for them. That is the way for all of us to succeed farther in our lives. I'm sure you guys have heard that saying before, we rise by lifting others. Well, that is a perfect example of happiness versus resentment. When you are in a state of uplifting joy and positivity, achieving your dreams and being successful is just going to come naturally to you instead of as a as opposed to if you're focusing on the negative and being resentful towards others. So that's happiness versus resentment. The next concept we're going to talk about is embracing change versus fear of change. So it's so important to understand that change is an integral part of life. Appreciate that it often leads to more positive outcome even if the change itself is difficult. So a wonderful example of this was when I was going to college. I was in a relationship for 2 years. I lived with my ex, and at the time, I had just received a letter from my college saying that I wasn't going to be accepted into the program that I had applied for, which this was my dream. I was devastated when I got this letter. I didn't want to spend another year doing gen eds or anything like that. I was ready to get started, and I just couldn't understand why this happened. And then a month later, me and my ex broke up, and it was a terrible breakup. And we ended up living together for like 3 months afterwards. And I still had like another 2 months on the lease, and I was just over it. I was having panic attacks, depression, anxiety, like everything. My life was a complete mess. This was 100% my lowest point, and I just couldn't understand why this was happening. Well, looking back almost, I think, 4 years later, that was a pivoting point in my life to where I'm at today. So, with nothing holding me back, after all that happened, my mom pushed me to move across the country to Las Vegas with my brother, who was stationed out here in the Air Force. She was like, you should just get away, take some time for yourself, like, obviously, plan on going back to school and all that. So I ended up moving, and then a month later is when I met Brad, which is my husband. Some of you might know. And then I moved to Australia. He's Australian, so I moved to Australia to be with him. And then after that, it was just like everything just came into place. That's when I started working on content creation. That's when I got back into photography, and all this stuff started falling into place. And 4 years later, here I am living out my wildest dreams. And it's crazy because if I would have been accepted into that program, if I would have um, stayed there, I really don't think any of this would have happened. And so, even if change is hard, even if change is devastating, oftentimes it leads to a positive outcome, whether it's something that you learned from, whether it's changing your location and stuff like that. For me, it oftentimes leads to a more positive outcome at the end. So, don't be scared of change. Embrace change. Be ready for it. And be ready to make the decisions to change. And that's going to help you with an abundant mindset. That's going to help you succeed. So, the next concept we're going to talk about is being proactive versus reactive. So, rather than wait for things to happen, make them happen. Strategically plan for the future. When you're reactive to something, you're constantly just waiting for it to happen. You're saying, okay, when this happens, then I'll do this. When I lose 5 pounds, then I'll do this. When I get a better camera, then I'll start putting more time into content creation. But instead, start with what you have, with what you know today. A really good example of this is with myself when I first started content creation. I just started out with my iPhone, and I remember there were a few times when I would tell myself, as soon as this happens, then I'll be big. As soon as this happens, then then brands will be coming to me. As soon as I get a camera, my page will blow up, brands will be flooding in, and that just didn't happen. So instead, work with what you have. I did start building my brand with just my iPhone photos, being even though I was being negative about it. If I would have put more effort into that, I probably would have been a lot bigger than if I would have been waiting for the right moment. So be proactive, make a plan. You don't have to have certain qualities or certain items or certain circumstances to make things happen. You have the ability to make them happen, which is what I did when I started doing content creation full time with only 4,000 followers. So it is possible. Make a plan, be proactive, and that will help you succeed. So the next concept we're going to talk about is learning versus knowing it all. You should crave learning. You should crave for knowledge. You should always be wanting to learn. And I have found that in so many circumstances, putting your ego ahead and thinking that you know it all has held so many people back from reaching their full potential. You can always find value from someone. No matter what it is, somebody always has value to offer. So always be willing to accept that knowledge. Don't put your ego in front. If you think you know everything, you limit your learning and growth. So, the last concept of abundance is knowing what is working and what is not, and having the ability to tell the difference. So, with a victim or scarcity mentality, you're always focused on what's not working instead of focusing on what is working. When you're focused on what's not working, that is just going to make more things seem like they're not working. Um, it's always goes along with that saying, what we focus on is what our realities are, and it's so true. So if you focus on what is working, then you're able to build off of that and then continue your growth on what is working instead of what's not working. And being able to have the ability to change things up when things aren't working and then making it into something that is working is so beneficial to your success. So if something's not working for you, don't dwell on it. Don't stop focusing on it, and then focus on the things that are working, or change it up so that what's not working you're able to make work, if that makes sense. So I hope you guys found this helpful. Please, this week, work on creating an abundant mindset. Take everything I've taught you, put it into practice, and I will see you guys in the next module.